Well, the SWR and I would like to thank you all for participating in this, the first Singapore dialogue on sustainable world resources, especially our speakers and panelists, and of course, our sponsors and partners, particularly the Lee Foundation and Far East Organization. I hope you'll agree with me, it's been an enriching day, if somewhat long, and there have been many insights on complex issues. In closing, let me just share perhaps 3 points in particular. The first is that there are changing expectations about the cost of resources. This goes beyond the price tag to look at the human and environmental costs. I know today we've discussed a lot about the haze, but the broader word, sustainability, is very much the frame. And this is the demand from citizens and consumers, as well as it is that non-government organizations give voice to the concerns of these citizens and consumers. And I think this push is just beginning in terms of their purchasing. For some of the products, like palm oil, the complex nature of the supply chain can deny consumers to make a very clear choice at the present. But the demands are growing, and I think the resource industry is starting to move towards sustainability. The second observation I had from some of the earlier discussions is that some companies are clearly leading the way, taking the steps to respond to these changing expectations. And they are not angels. They are pushed by legislation, which the minister talked about, and the danger perhaps of boycotts, which hasn't been really raised today, but has always been raised somewhere when haze is in the air. Some are also pulled by the prospect of achieving higher profits in the product prices, or indirectly to improve their brand, corporate reputation, and to innovate. They're by no means perfect, and the instances where declared aims have not really lived up to reality. And therefore, I was glad to hear that the minister says that while we're pushing here the law, there'll be a balanced approach. But I am optimistic. I don't believe that everything I've heard today is mere puffery and what they call greenwash. I believe there can be practical and innovative steps that make business sense, and indeed dollars. There are companies that are setting examples and showing leadership, and there is a business case for sustainability to be evaluated and shared. We have to look for ways, as the minister said, to advantage companies that are doing the right thing. And I think this is an ongoing search. And this is not only for environment protection and the haze, but the positive contributions they can make to the society and overall economic development. But let me be clear, while they promise much, it is clearly the right thing to do to monitor and verify their actual performance against what they promise. Even if they deserve recognition for the pioneer efforts, we mustn't be taken in. And this is the third point I want to take from the dialogue, is that cooperation is possible. Too often we talk as if a trade-off is unavoidable between environment and business. I think a number of speakers have said, no, it's what, and. I think it was Harish who said that. When the haze is in the air, there's often very much finger-pointing between governments and between companies, between NGOs and companies. It was therefore important to hear of cooperation happen across national borders, not only between governments, but also NGOs with different parts of the supply chain. And I was very grateful, therefore, that so many of our friends, NGOs from the region, and media from the region, made the time to come here for this dialogue. The haze clearly shows the environment is not confined to our borders, and therefore our cooperation also needs to transcend borders. That brings us back to this dialogue. This is the first cooperative effort to bring all the stakeholders together across the supply chain, different commodities, among countries. But it's by no means the perfect dialogue. Singapore, as the hub for trade and finance, can and should do our part, and so must the traders and financial institutions. But as Gurmit and others people have observed, the last panel, the three banks that were there, Citibank and my good friend Michael Zink, Credit Suisse and HSBC, they're really the global banks. The Singapore banks, the Malaysian banks, the Indonesian banks could not be brought to this panel, perhaps by my lack of personal persuasion, or perhaps because they're not really further enough along that journey towards looking for sustainability. And to this end, I really want to thank those who made specific commitments to sustainability and to encourage others to follow the example. The SWR, which I chair, the think tank that's organizing dialogue, will also make our commitments. Our first commitment is that we will convene a meeting in probably October or November this year with the NGOs and other experts to help monitor efforts on the haze, specifically on the haze, rather than just the broader sustainability. Second, our commitment is that we will work with others towards establishing a website to make the emerging information and possibly relevant and reliable maps publicly available. This is something that I think the Minister in some ways called for, that transparency must be increased in this area. We plan that this dialogue will return in the coming years, and we hope to grow it to encourage corporations and all of us here to move to sustainability in the production, purchase, trade and finance, and consumption of resources in our region. So on behalf of the SWR and our small team that has brought this together, thank you all again, once again, for your time and contributions.